Hi, it's Anna Haferman. Today I want to show you how to make this bubble beanie that I've put a pom-pom on. I just have it on here temporarily so you can make it without the pom-pom as well. It's a 3-1 mock ribbing that I hung the hem, and then I did a tuck stitch very similar to what we did on the scarf, but we're using the other side as the public side. Now the yarn I'm using is the Caron Skinny Cakes, which is a number 3 yarn. This one's called Raspberry Ganache. And what's nice about this is it already has color changes, and it's wound into a cake. Now I always use thread from the outside with my cakes rather than the inside. I find that if you thread from the outside, it threads fine, and then you don't wind up with an empty hole in the middle with your yarn cake collapsing. So I'm going to thread the machine and show you what tools we need. So what we'll need for this is our tools. We'll need our pushers, at least one of our transfer tools with a 1 eye, our latch hook to do the pom-pom, just to get the pom-pom in. The pom-pom has a little stretchy thing, so you can pull it in that way. Then we'll need some Crayola washable markers, and it's very important to get the washable ones because we're going to be marking the bed, and you want 2 colors that contrast pretty well so you can see the difference. A couple of weights and some clips for yarn. Also the cast-on comb. I'm setting my row counter to 0, and then I'm setting my carriage. I'm putting all the levers on N, so the back 2 levers are all the way back, and the front 2 levers are all the way forward. So everything's on N, and then I'm setting it on tension 3. Now I'll take my needle pusher and select needles from 55 on the left to 55 on the right. And this is for an adult size hat. So 55. Then I'll take my 1-4 needle my 1-3 needle pusher, which what this does is selects every 4th needle. So I'm going to start over on the left with the 4th needle in and push everything back. So every 4th needle back, because I'm going to E-wrap onto these needles and do a 3-1 mock rib. So the way it should end up is you should have groups of 3 starting at the left, so you'll have 3, 3, 3, all the way down, and on the right you should only have 2 needles, and this is important for the setup to make the pattern work out correctly and be able to seam it nicely. This setup works really well. So then I will E-wrap every needle. First I'm going to leave a long tail so that I can seam up. So leave about a yard of, that might be generous, but leave about a yard of yarn as a tail. It's always better to have a little more than a little less. And then we'll start E-wrapping, just normal E-wrap. So we'll E-wrap 3, skip the needle out of work, and just keep going until the end. And E-wrap, this is just single E-wrap. So I'm just going around each needle. If you are unfamiliar with e-wrapping, I show you how to do it in the sock video that I made, or there are lots of tutorials. If you have motion issues, I have an automatic e-wrap using the carriage video, which is easier if you have motion issues in your fingers or hands. It's a little slower, but it works really well. So I'll put a link to that video. Now I have everything e-wrapped. I'm going to do I've got my carriage on the right, set on NN, tension 3. I've got my row counter at 0, and I'm going to do a few rows. First I'm going to knit off the e-wrap, which is just a little bit stiff. But then do another row, and that one will go much smoother. Just make sure everything knits off. The first couple rows are a little difficult, and then we can start hanging weight. So I'm going to put a weight on each end. Now I've got about 8 rows, and now I'm going to use my cast on comb as a weight. So I'm going to take these off. And then I can put my cast on comb and use it, get it right in there. And just use it to weight everything down, since we have so many needles. If you have a lot of these kind of weights, you could go across with those, any kind of weight, but since the KX350 comes with this comb, we're going to use that. So we'll weight those down and then put these weights here, and that helps it a little. There we go. So 8. Now I've got 30 rows on my ribbing. So the next thing I'm going to do is take off the cast on comb. I don't need my clip anymore. So I'll take off the comb, set that aside, and then I'm going to take a transfer tool, a one-eyed transfer tool, and start hanging the hem. So I'll start on the right. What I'm taking is the stitch, the in-between stitch, and I'm hanging it on the empty needle. And then I'm going to just grab one of these little stitches, one of these stitches that was in the original, the 2 there, and hang that on the end. But all I'm hanging for most of the hem is going to be this one stitch, and filling the empty needles. So this goes really fast because you're only doing every 4th stitch. So that ends up looking like this when it's knit together. So the next thing, well, I'm going to keep going with that. Picking up that now when you get to the last when you've got your last E-wrap hung, and then take your last stitch here and hang it on the last needle. So you'll just have 2 on that one. So now we've got so now I've got all the E-wraps hung, and what I want to do is pull all my needles out so that I can close the hem. So I'm going to pull them all out, holding them down, pull them all out to position E. So this way, when I close the hem, it's just going to be easier to knit it off. So first thing I'm going to do is hang my comb again to give it some weight. What I want to do is get the weight, the comb in there so it's hanging, especially on those edge stitches, just to weight it down some. And there you go. So now it's weighted down. I'll put the weights on as well. And I'm at row 30 because I did 30 rows for the hem. And I'm still at tension 3. I'm going to knit 1 row across at tension 3. And then I'm going to go up to tension 5, which I believe is probably off camera for you, but I'm turned to tension 5 and I'm going to knit 1 row back to the right. So my hem is finished. Now what I've just done here is here's our 3 stitches that were in work and the stitch out of work. Then I've hung that the E-wrapped stitch there, and then it's knitted it off. So that's what we've done so far. So now we're starting here. Now we're going to start our pattern, which is the bubble pattern, and that's done with a tuck stitch. A tuck, it's a tuck stitch. I believe it's the same one we did for the scarf. So now starting on the left, I'm going to take my 1-3 tool again. So this side is the 1-3 and this one is not. So we're not using this side. And I'm going to mark this side so I am sure that I'm going to be using it, because sometimes you get confused, but this is the one we're going to use and I don't want to use this by mistake. So I'm marking the 1-3 side with my orange Crayola. So starting at needle 54, I'm going to pull out every 4th stitch. And it's important, the setup again is important, which is why I said start at needle number 54 and pull that one out, and then every 4th one except for the last one. We don't want the last one as part of the pattern, so we want every 4th. So you should have 1 stitch, then every 4th one, so 1 here, and then there's groups of 3, all the way across, and on this side there's a group of 4. So now the next thing I'm going to do is the stitches that I just pulled out, I'm going to mark with orange. And this way, when we work our pattern, it will be easy to know which needles to pull out. So I just take a Crayola washable marker, make sure it's washable, you do not want a permanent marker. This will come off with just water, like a damp paper towel. So I just mark each one that I've pulled out. And this is just going to make it easier for me to do the pattern from now on. So that's our first set of needles that we're going to be putting into hold. So now what I'm doing, and it's off camera unfortunately, I'm putting my carriage into hold. So I'm taking the front levers, let's see if I can, taking the front levers and pushing them back to H, and I'll show you when the carriage gets across. And now I want to reset my row counter to 0, and my carriage, and then I'm going to knit 4 rows. So I will get halfway and I'll show you how the carriage is set up. So I've got these back levers on N and the front levers pushed back to H. So I'm going to do 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, now, so I've got needles, my stitches held. So I have 4 tucks on each held needle. Now, what I want to do is knit everything, which will form the pattern. So I'm turning my first lever to N. So the lever on the left, because I'm going to the left, the front lever is going to go to N. So I'm going to pull that one lever forward and then knit off that row. So here's how that looks. If the back 2 are still in N, and the one going to the left is on N, the one on the right stays at H. The only one I moved was this one. And I knit 1 row. And now when I get to that side, I'm going to push that lever back to H. So, and I'm going to try to remember to do that so that I don't mess up my pattern. So I'm just going to automatically push back to H. Now, I'm going to take, see how I have the needles I held before. I'm going to hold the ones in the middle. So I've got 3 needles between each one, and the middle one I'm going to pull forward all the way across the bed, except for any end needles. And the way it's set up, it won't hit any end needles on this one. Now I'm going to mark those in a contrasting color, and I'm using black this time. So this way I'll know how my pattern, which needles to pull out each time. So now I make sure my carriage is still on hold. So my back levers are still on N. They're staying on N the whole time. And my front levers are both on H. So what I'm going to be doing now is 4 rows, and holding these needles. So I'm doing 4 rows. Now I'm going to, my lever, I want to knit these off, so I'm going to put this side because I'm going this way, and when I go with these levers here control the carriage when I'm going this way. The ones on the other side control it going the other way. So I want just to go to N, which will knit everything off, and I just want to do 1 row like that. And then as soon as I get across, I'm going to flip that lever back to 8. Now this is a pattern, a multiple of 5. So once I've done 2 sets of it, I'll be on 10. When I've done 3 sets, I'll be on 15. And that's a way where you can keep track if you get lost. So now I want to pick out my original needles, which were the orange ones. And so I'm going to pull those forward. Now we're going to do 4 rows of tucking or holding. 1, and then flip the carriage on the left because we're going to the left to N to knit everything off on this row. So let's do that 1 row, and you'll see we'll be on 15 when we're done. So 4 plus 1. As soon as we get across, flip that lever back to H. Now we'll pick up the alternate needles, making sure we have the right side of the tool. I did orange before, so now I'm doing black. And the best way to line this up is to go to the last one you did. It looks like I didn't mark that one. Go to the last one you did and get your tool in place there. So now we'll do 4 rows, and we should wind up on row 20. Well, 4 rows plus 1 should be row 20. So now I'm going to take my weights and put them on the edges to hold my edge stitches down. I'm going to move up my my cast on comb because tuck stitch really likes a lot of weight, so we're going to make sure it gets it. And so you might have to kind of coax it into place. There we go. So make sure it's holding things down well. So hold it, there we go. There. It should be pulling everything down really nicely. Tuck, because there's so much on the needles, it needs to be held down really well. Now here is a good example of where you can see how the stitches are piling up, and especially because they changed color. So that means I did the orange ones the last time, so now I'm going to do the black ones. So I go over here, select all my black, and what I do is I line it up on the last black one. There we go. And now making sure I'm on hold on both sides, I'm going to do 4 rows. And now I'm doing my normal row, so I'm going to flip, and I'll be going to the right, so I'll flip my right side to N and do my 1 row and check I'm on a multiple of 30, so I haven't lost my place. Cross, immediately go back to H, and select the opposite needles. So I did black, and now I'm going to do orange. And I'm going to do 4 rows, making sure I'm on hold. And flip to N for my 1 row. Go across, immediately flip back to H. I'm going to keep going to row 57. And then, so now this is going to be my last selection row. So I'm on row 55. Make sure I'm on hold, and this will be, so this row is going to be a little different because we're just going to do 1, 2, and now we're on row 57. So once we get to row 57, we're going to flip our carriage so our front levers are both on N and knit 1 row. Now I'm going to transfer every other stitch, and this will make the top less bulky, so it'll decrease the number of stitches in half. And this is exactly how we did it on the first basic hat pattern that I showed you, and I can put a link to that one. But basically what I'm going to do is transfer every other stitch to its neighbor. Starting on the first stitch, so I have every other stitch transferred to its neighbor, so I have 2 stitches on every other needle. Now, the first thing I want to do is make sure that all the needles with no stitches on them are pushed all the way back to position A, because I don't want them to knit. Position A is non-working position, so the needles won't knit at all. And then the needles with 2 stitches on them, I'm going to pull all the way forward. You don't have to do this, but with extra stitches, you run the risk of dropping one. So I've always pulled them out if I'm just going to knit that 1 row. And because the carriage is on NN, these stitches out here will knit. So they won't hold. If we had it on H, it would hold, but we have it on N, so they'll knit. And I just want to knit 2 rows. And there I've got my 2 rows knit. We're almost done. So that's all the knitting. Now I'm going to take all of these stitches off using either a darning needle or my double-eyed transfer tool. I'm going to take the yarn and make sure it's at least as wide as the bed, because I want to sew everything off, and I don't want to, this is to gather them, so I just want a longish piece. So I'm going to cut the yarn. Now I'm going to sew these off, and the easiest way, we're going to do this differently than we did on the first hat. Let's thread the needle, and I've taken the comb off because it's a lot faster if you take them off. So you pull the needles out a little and just keep threading in, and once you get about 6, pull your yarn through, and it can stay on the needles unless it gets in your way. So then I'm going to go to and I can And now what I'm going to do is push all these forward and then push them back to get them off the needles. Sorry, I just saw I cleared the hooks there. And now I've got my hat off my, I've got the hat off of the bed. And when it comes off, it's going to seem really wide and really short, but you start stretching it, it will come together nicely. So I'm threading my needle and I'm going to mattress stitch it up the side, and I showed this in the first hat video. So basically I'm sewing these here, but what I'm going to do is have them so they fit together like that. So I start here and go around so they line up. So you'll start the yarn's coming from this side, so I'm going to go over here and go one stitch. You'll see you have one row of stitches, and you go in the first one, pick up 2 little bars and pull that together. Then go to the other side and go in here and pick up, you make sure you're 1 row in, pick up 2 little bars, and go back to the other side, go where you go into the stitch you came out of, which you can see if you pull it a little bit. Go in there and go 1, 2, and then go over here 1 row, 2 bars, so you're getting that on your needle, and then go around here, and then when we get to the pattern it changes slightly, so I'll show you how to do that. So as we're mattress stitching, what we're doing is picking up 2 little bars each time we go through. So I'll go over to this side and I'll go back, and you can see it, the purple was where I came out, so I'm going to go back into the same place, leaving 1 whole stitch along there. I'm going to pick up 2 little bars on that side, and then I'm going to go over here, and where the purple is coming out, and this ended up working out, I'm showing you in the lighter color, and because the purple yarn is what I'm using to sew it up, it shows very nicely. So I go in there, pick up 2 little bars, and that's pretty standard mattress stitching. So then go back here where the purple is and pick up 2 little bars again, and then go back here, 1, 2, and then here got 1, and then what happens is, because we tucked all those 1 stitch away from the end, we've got a pile up of little bars there, so they look different, but we're going to treat it exactly the same. So we're going to go back in where we came out, there's 1 bar, and then we're just going to take the first one of that bunch, and that will be our second one that we pick up, and this way it'll line up nicely when it's sewn together. So I go back in here, and I've got 1, 2. This side it was further away from the edge, so we don't get that bunching up there. And then I go back here, and you can see I have these, they're all sort of bunched up in there, but there's 4 of them left. There were 5 total, so I'm going to go get the next 2 back here, back where the purple was, pick up 2 again, just like normal mattress stitch, come back here and find 2 little bars to pick up. And one's kind of behind the other one at this point, so just pick them both up. And back to this side and get the next two. And you see now it's changed to purple, so the next one is blue and then purple. And then we just keep doing that. And it's just that one little, those little bunchy areas that you have to treat. You're really doing the exact same thing, but the first time I looked at it, I wasn't sure what to do and had to go back and do it again. So here I've got 1, 2. And then I'm going to go back here. So I've got it all sewed together now, and there's my seam. And now I'm going to just cut the tail that on the top. I don't need that much yarn. So then what you'll do is just pull on this piece to gather it up, and you want to pull it, you want to make sure your original tail is inside the hat before you start, and then pull your other piece so it's pretty tight. You obviously don't pull so hard that it breaks, but pull it pretty tight. Well, you'll get this little circle here, and then we just want to close that up. Just sort of weaving, you're kind of weaving it in and out. You're just going across. You want to make this secure so that it doesn't, because it's just held by that one thread that gathered it up. So you just want to make sure to sew it all down. What I usually do is go in the middle, out, and go another way. And do it neatly so it looks good from the top, and you know, and if you're going to put a pom-pom on the top, it doesn't matter as much what it looks like. Because it'll get, the pom-pom will hide your stitches. So once you've got it to how you want it, just come in through the other side, and this is your original tail, and then I'm just going to cut those and tie them together. And you can weave those tails in, but I'm sure you know how to do that. And there we go. And so then, if you do want to do a pom-pom, here's our pom-pom. I ordered these on Amazon. You can make a pom-pom, but I don't like making pom-poms, or I'm terrible at making pom-poms. So these come with a little elastic thing. So what I'll do is take my latch hook, or if you have a crochet hook, you can use that. Close it up. Put that, I'm putting it through the top of the hat. So try to get it as centered as you can. Push it through that hole. So now it's coming through the top. And then I'm just going to take the loop of the pom-pom, close the latch so I can get it in, and pull that through to the other side. And then you can sew that down. If you have some people sew a button to the inside and attach the button to the bottom. There it is. If you're interested in machine knitting, please consider subscribing and liking my videos. Leave some comments and tell me if there's anything you're interested in seeing. I have several other videos on the Brother KX350.